knowing and acting are integrated. And the reason that knowing and acting are integrated is because the complexity of the human, that I mentioned time and time again. First of all, a human being has to be involved in the cultivation of the self. So Confucian thinking can be characterized as a philosophy of self-cultivation. The self, in a minimum sense, is the integration of the body and mind. Well, the mind is also understood as the heart, because the mind is not only a function of knowing, but also an important function of feeling. So affective, feeling, emotion on one hand, and cognitive, thinking and reflection. That's the reason why the Chinese term sometimes render as either mind or heart in terms of xin is both mind and heart. There's no distinction. And how that particular aspect of the human is integrated with the human body, that's a major form of cultivation. And that cultivation is necessarily linked to human interaction. Without human interaction, in other words, every human being is a social being. Without human interaction, self-cultivation is not possible. So once the first test is how you interact continuously, perhaps in a fruitful interaction between the world out there, the world of relationships. But there are two other dimensions often ignored by scholars of Confucian studies because they consider Confucianism as social ethics. One is the relationship between human species and nature. Nature often is understood as the earth, the planet. Hopefully, a sustainable, harmonious relationship can be developed between the human species and nature. That's another challenge. The final challenge is the interaction between the human heart and mind and the way of heaven. Now, if you recall the doctrine of the mean, which I rendered as centrality and harmony, an important feature of learning to be human is to understand the premise that human nature is confirmed by heaven. And heaven is not God or Brahman or the Buddhist idea of nirvana. Heaven is closely interacted with the human. Heaven cares, and heaven is everywhere. And sometimes, from the Taoist point of view, the Confucians accepted that heaven is so independent of human action. Anything that heaven does, for example, how nature unfolds, the four seasons, the transformation of creating all kinds of plants, minerals, animals, it's something independent of the human will. And yet, what human beings will become is not only a concern of the human world, it is also a concern of heaven, because heaven is creativity in itself. And if human beings become destructive, it is not simply related to the anthropological world, meaning the human world. It has cosmological significance. If you push that, I would like to push that, even in the privacy of your own home, or you are totally alone, anything you do will have an effect not only on society, but on heaven as well. In other words, anything you do in terms of your private action has cosmological significance. The assumption is the whole universe is integrated. So any action a human being is involved in doing would affect not only other human beings in society and nature, but even the cosmos. If human beings collectively is involved in some action, the effect could be substantial. So there's a strong belief that there is partnership between human beings and heaven. That's the reason that human heart and mind and the weight of heaven will have to be, there is mutuality or mutual responsiveness between the human heart and mind and the weight of heaven. If human beings are involved in a form of destruction, heaven cannot do much about it, because heaven is not omnipotent. Heaven is not all powerful. If human beings can survive all kinds of natural disasters. A typical example was the sage King Yu, who happened to contain the flood, the major flood, and in so doing, turned the flood into irrigational system. So human beings, if they are mobilized, will be able to deal with any kind of natural disasters. The only one that human beings cannot survive turn out to be self-destructive acts, especially collectively. Yes?
What's your definition of heaven here?
Yes, that's the big question, right? So I would consider heaven as the ultimate source of creativity or of meaning. So heaven engenders everything. Heaven has this quality, this of course human imagination has the quality of giving life to things. It's always creative. Sometimes natural disasters happen which we consider as a deviation of the true nature of heaven. Heaven creates. Now even natural phenomena could be considered destructive. Phenomena could be understood as manifestation of heaven's creativity. And so in Chinese political philosophy, this is not only in Confucianism, but in political philosophy in general, human actions, especially the rulers, like emperors and so forth, they have to understand the mutual responsiveness between their action and heaven. If they become destructive, become tyrannical, heaven will punish them. Because you know the mandate of heaven will no longer function. So heaven is all present. Heaven is all knowing, but heaven is not all powerful. And heaven is creativity itself. Heaven engenders. Heaven is this care in heaven that human beings would not only survive and flourish. The highest manifestation of being human in terms of self-cultivation is to form a partnership with heaven. This partnership is stated very early, even before Confucius. Heaven engenders, meaning heaven as creative force would engender all these living things, but humans complete. So human culture is not considered as a deviation of nature. Human culture is an amplification, is a true manifestation of nature. But if human culture becomes destructive, especially by human beings themselves, heaven will not be able to do anything about it. You have a question first.
Does the mandate of heaven only apply to the emperor? Does the idea of like the mandate of heaven only apply to the emperor?
More than that. Because heaven sees as the people see. Heaven hears as the people hear. The action of the emperor is judged by the well-being of the people. The emperor is responsible for heaven because the emperor is responsible for human. The final judgment of empress performance.